Recording in progress.
Good morning. That's my morning. And welcome to the Saturday, March 8th, 2025 listening session of the Joint Budget Subcommittee. Okay, because this is the only one of our listening sessions that you, people have been able to remote into or come in via Zoom, I do have this spiel I have to go through. So, all citizens are welcome to attend public meetings in person. To view the live meeting remotely, citizens are encouraged to watch the live stream on the Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel or the live broadcast on Comcast Channel 9 or Verizon Channel 29. Meetings are also archived by Franklin TV on the Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel and shown on repeat on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29 for those who miss the live meeting. To listen to the meeting remotely, citizens may call in using this number, 929-205-6099. This will not permit participation in the meeting. To participate in the meeting remotely, citizens are able to join a Zoom webinar using the Zoom webinar ID 864-3821-0281. Then you need to hit the pound sign. Once again, the webinar ID is 864-3821-0281 pound. All participants who wish to speak during the webinar must enter their full name and email address when joining the webinar. All participants will be automatically muted upon joining the webinar. In order to speak, participants who have entered full name and email address will need to select the raise hand function to request to be unmuted. All speakers will be required to state their full name and street address before speaking. Okay. First item on the agenda, again, just so everybody understands, because those of you who are here for the first time, I'll explain it. Those of you who are repeat customers, certainly I apologize for being repetitious with it. But the Joint Budget Subcommittee is made up of the budget subcommittees of your three financial entities within the town. The Finance Committee, the School Committee, and the Town Council. And this Joint Budget Subcommittee started this process back on September 11th. We've been building our budget since then. I want to again thank the school department and the school administration, school committee, for moving their budget process forward or back so that it aligned with how we have built the town budget over the years. So it has given us the opportunity to move some very good numbers forward earlier. We decided early on that we would have 6 listening sessions, trying to get the message out to the community as to where we are, why we're here, what we need to do to move forward, and answer the community's questions. And I think the listening sessions, certainly from my standpoint, have been wonderful. And I think the attendance has continuously grown. The questions are continuing to come, And I think we're reaching a lot more of the residents than we ever have in the past through these listening sessions. So I applaud the efforts of our town administration, our department heads who have given, in addition of their regular time and the regular meetings they have to go to, we have added a substantial amount of meetings for them to have to go to. And they continuously come, and I appreciate that. We all appreciate that, and I think the community does. These listening sessions we have done in different parts of the town. We did it one at the Elks. We've done a couple at the Senior Center. We have this one. The reason we're doing one in council chambers was it allows us to go remote and allows people who couldn't come in person to any of them for one reason or another, gives them the opportunity to Zoom in and ask their questions or listen to the presentation or voice their concerns over Zoom. So this is the 5th of 6 listening sessions. The last one is Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock at Franklin High School at the auditorium. Following that listening session, my hope is by the time we've gotten to the 6th, most of the questions have been asked, most of the statements have been made, but it will be an opportunity for those who haven't been able to come to any others to ask them there. At the conclusion of the listening part of that meeting, this committee will discuss and come up with a recommendation to send forward to the town council. Whether it be to put an override question on and what the recommendation of this body would be for a number and a conceivable date. Again, the final decision is that of the town council. So regardless of what comes, the recommendation that comes out of here, when it gets to the town council, they're the final decision. Now, obviously, I'm sure you have 3 members of the town council sitting on this committee. So, and you have 4, sorry, and we have 2 more in the audience. So, for the most part, they're hearing everything that we're hearing. So, appreciate that. So, without further delay, I'll ask our town administrator, who will give a kind of a brief update. Then I'll ask the superintendent of schools to give a brief update, and then we'll go to the audience for questions and comments. So with that, Jamie.
Sure. So through Mr. Chairman and through to the committee and the folks on Zoom, there's about 8 or 9 folks, 10 folks on Zoom, and I'm sure there's some folks watching at home on the live stream. And just for the plug, a lot of what I'm going to go through was gone through this past week at the town council meeting. I gave a 20-slide presentation which represents what's in the budget model. There's some copies over here on the table. We've also left out copies of the citizen discount and exemptions list for citizens that want to apply for some of those rebates and abatements. The Town of Franklin webpage, if you go right on the home page, there's a town budget page. And we have put up there all of the materials going all the way back to September. We have shown, I think, the superintendent and I have shown the evolution of the budget process. I think if anybody has hopefully come away with something for the 2 of us and the school committee and the council, this is a 24/7, 365 endeavor. Municipal finance is a complicated issue. All of these issues, by the way, are dictated, and the schedules are dictated by state law. So we're just facilitating what is in state law, but we've put up there not only all the materials, we've also put up all the YouTube clips that reflect back to all of these meetings. So, and I also have on that webpage, we did put up the slideshow from this week's council meeting, as well as that YouTube clip. So if you're, I guess, interested in learning about all of these issues and the evolution of the budget process, you can go back and take a look. If folks do go to the packet that I've presented over here in the memo, I'm just going to run through it quick. I feel like this is Groundhog Day for me. I know there's some new people that are here, so I'll try to be as brief but yet comprehensive as I can. Really, the first page of the memo really goes through some of the history, I think, that you just cited, Mr. Chairman, about the start of this process back to September. I put in some very important factoids of historical context. It's 13 or 14 pages, which I do respect for some. Maybe too much information. Some people want to cut to the chase. But there's really the important information in here is really also on several pages of the changes that we've made in the budget between the budget model in January and the budget model that is here today. And the reason why that's important is not only for transparency's sake, but just so people really have a good idea of what has changed. And I think one point I would highlight is really between when the governor files her budget in January and really this week, usually at the council the first week of March, I give a preliminary budget, right? I give a snapshot. Obviously the last couple of years have been a little different. We've been trying to get out more information and make sure everybody can follow along. But traditionally, once the governor puts out her budget in January, that starts the municipal and school budgeting process every year. And so it's no shock that when you pick up the newspaper, you can also see that the town of Mansfield is looking at an override, the town of Norton, the town of Easton. The town of Natick, by the way, their override is in a couple weeks, on March 25th. There are dozens and dozens of communities, again, contemplating overrides across eastern Massachusetts. I was at a legislative breakfast yesterday, and one of the state reps from Natick asked the room how many communities are looking at overrides, and every single town manager's hand went up. Every single one. This is not an issue that is unique to Franklin. This is an issue that even every other AAA bond rated community is looking at. I won't go through all of the details of what has changed, but I will go to page 4. Really what I did the other night was at the council, and you can see it online, is basically I've tried to present a couple of options to try to give the public an understanding of what's at stake. And Model A would require an approval of a budget based on level services of a $3.862 million deficit. That I go through here on a few pages what the assumptions are in that budget. Not much has actually changed since the start of this process. I would remind everybody in the room and at home and all of you, I feel like I get sick of saying it, but I'm sure that this will help give context to folks who are just tuning in for the first time. We used just over $3 million in one-time money to patch the current budget of FY25. So we knew already going into FY26 that we were already $3 million plus in deficit coming in. To be at 3.8, and given the context around collective bargaining, healthcare across Massachusetts at roughly 15%, and the retirement issues at Norfolk County Retirement Board, in addition to inflation, in addition to what we're seeing, I think the superintendent can speak to this too, is an extraordinary amount of demand for service, whether it be snow and ice removal, plowing, road patches, as all the snows melt. I know everybody's hitting potholes, and obviously there's a tremendous amount of need that we've heard from the community at the schools as well. And we've already heard from the police and fire chief, I think at every joint budget meeting, about the call volumes that they're seeing, in addition to record-breaking demand at the library, recreation department, and I think everybody hopefully came away this past week. Our senior center is standing room only. It's packed to the brim, which is a great thing. We should be proud of that, but I think the demand for service is extraordinary. And to be sitting here while it is a deficit, knowing the context around those numbers as well as every other city and town in the area, to be at a $3.8 million deficit is not actually too shabby. I was talking with the town manager from Easton. They're looking at a $7.5 million override. The town of Natick is looking at, I believe on the ballot, is over a $7 million override. So when we're looking around, I think it's a lot of credit to the council, the school committee, the superintendent, the redistricting process, all of our department heads, and how they've been able to squeeze out every possible penny to try to reduce this deficit. But in Model A, I write out exactly what those assumptions are. This is including a level service budget, other than a couple of minor issues with a request from the Board of Assessors and also the restored positions that the superintendent and school committee have placed in their budget. But really, it's really a bare bones level service. What you see now today for services, level service means you're getting the same level of service next year. So level service basically means cut, copy, and paste from what today is and move forward. I think what's probably of most interest to folks in the room is Model B. I title it "Everything is on the Table" because that's the truth. We have now done everything we can, and we are now down to the bone. And so I list out here about $4.3 million or so worth of scoped out cuts. These are not the list guaranteed. But at this point, because it's a preliminary budget and we're still gathering feedback from the community, I wanted to try to articulate if there was not an override or if there was not another way to patch, find revenues to patch these up or find some other creative solution, these are the likely reductions that would have to happen. I would also point people on our website to the department head letter that was sent out in December. They go through a very well-written letter about some cuts. We may think something's not important than another issue, but the town government in particular has, most of our departments have regulatory requirements that we have to fulfill. The conservation agent has to do wetlands work with the Conservation Commission. Our town clerk has to do records and vitals, marriage licenses, a whole suite of services in town elections. My office has to do liquor licensing and restaurant licenses and Class 2 licenses. Our Board of Health has regulatory environment that they work within. Planning board. So while it may sound like, somebody may say, a town planner is not important as a police officer or teacher. I just can't get rid of the town planner because they have a job to do with the planning board that's in state law. So there's a lot of other things in there that we just cannot cut. And so I've put in here a list of proposals that should give folks an understanding of exactly what that looks like. And just to articulate, we'd see a $400,000+ reduction in our town facilities department. And by the way, that predominantly affects the school district because most of our facilities money in the facilities budget goes towards the schools. We manage $1.3 million worth of property. 1 million of that 1.3 are school facilities. So that, in essence, is really a cut to the school district. Square footage, yeah. We'd see probably a $250,000 cut to the police department, a $250,000 cut to the fire department. All of that is layoffs. As Chief Lynch has eloquently said for years, his expense budget is like 2% of the police department budget, right? Everything in the police department is all staff. That is just police officers. You'd be seeing a reduction of about $2 to $2.1 million in the school department. Why that number? Because 54% of the budget is account 300 for the superintendent and the school committee. So 54% of that deficit is that number 2.1 million. You'd see a reduction of about 400,000 in public works. You'd see about a $50,000 cut to the library, which would put us right on the edge of the cliff to being decertified. And as I write out here, I know many of you that were on the council for years, Councilor Mercer, Councilor Hamlin, and some other folks, Councilor Pellegrini and DeLorco and others, you remember the days when we were embarrassed by the fact that our First Nations lending library was decertified. I don't think any of us want to go back to that. You'd be seeing a cut of several $100,000 in OPEB contributions. While most people don't know what OPEB is, they should tune in to the March 5th council meeting last week and hear the 20-minute or so section from our actuarial and our auditors on OPEB. The good news is, as all of you know, we're doing well better than every other community in the Commonwealth, but there is a significant threat here to that liability as well as our bond rating. We could use some one-time monies from the MEC stabilization fund, but as all of you know, we're using one-time monies this year. You're just essentially kicking the can down the road to FY27. So there's a whole menu here. I'm happy to answer questions on it. The last thing I'll mention, through you, Mr. Chairman, is as many of the comments were at the senior center this week, you know, I did put in, I get asked all the time, I know all of you do too, well, how much is this going to cost me? What if there was an override? And I put in here a basic estimate based off the FY25 tax rate. And we included in the packet for folks that want a historical context. The Board of Assessors at their tax rate hearing provided a 35 to 40 year history of what the average baseline Proposition 2.5 increase in town has been, going back to 1998. Some people went back a little further, but you know, 40 years is enough, or 35 years is enough to really look. If you look over that time frame, you know, and certainly we're in a different real estate market right now. You know, we've seen an average baseline Prop 2.5 increase of going up about $172. People can look back to last year. Their taxes on the baseline Prop 2.5 for this fiscal year went up $227. The previous year was $198. And FY23 was $350. The year before that was $187. Even those last 5 years should give a window to everybody as to why we don't project what the FY26 tax rate will be. Because as you know very well, Mr. Chairman, and all of you on this board, if I publish a number of what we would anticipate in FY26, somebody's going to say in FY, you know, when it gets to the tax rate in November, well, you told us it was going to be this back 9 months ago, and I think it's just not advantageous to do that. So what we have done for the taxpayer, though, is give people a historical context. They can go in and judge for themselves exactly what it is. And I think the senior center listening session was very positive, where a lot of people just said, hey, this is great. It gave us an idea. And if there are Facebook rumors out there or social media rumors, at least now you have a historical context as elected officials and appointed officials to go and say, hey, you know, if somebody's rumoring it's a $3,000 increase or something extreme, you can say, hey, no, that's not true. Look at what the data shows of the past. I do put in here a calculation based off FY25, what a $3.862 million override would cost, and based off a $679,000 home in Franklin assessed, that would be a $312 increase based off last year's property tax. I also lay out here on page 11 some of the other cost increases that people will see. Again, trying to be transparent and educate the community. The Tri-County School debt exclusion will hit this year, but that was a voter-approved initiative. It was 81% in favor of that at the ballot. The community clearly, that's beyond a landslide. I mean, that is almost unheard of to have a ballot initiative at 80+%. It's 60% when the Community Preservation Act prevailed at 60-40. That was a landslide. So 80-20 is really substantial. So it's about $120 per household. If your house is assessed at less than $679,000, you're going to pay far less than that. If your home is assessed at greater than $679,000, you'll obviously pay a little bit more than that. I've also laid out here some of the other increases. We're not looking at a trash and recycling increase this year based on procurement with our vendors. And I give credit to Brutus Cantareggi and Derek Adams and our DPW for doing a fantastic job trying to maintain costs there. And our water and sewer rates are going up a little less than $100 this year combined due to state and federal mandates on PFAS as well as water main replacements. And I think I don't need to say this again, but I know everybody in the community is well versed on this, but we are replacing the 110-year-old Beaver Street Interceptor pipe, which really, and I know this sounds like it's funny, but it's true. If you want to continue to flush your toilets, seriously, that is probably one of the greatest investments you can make. And for $62 a household, that is a nominal amount of money to make sure that the safety is there. And as we've said many, many times before, the town of Plymouth did not do this, and the city of Quincy did not do this, and they are paying far more in that. So I give credit to our Public Works Department and the Town Council for doing a lot of public education on this. I don't think when we started out the Beaver Street Interceptor project many years ago, we would have foreseen a pandemic coming, inflation, incivility, all sorts of other issues that we're seeing up and down the last 5 years. But at the end of the day, we also do respect the fact that you know, a lot of people are struggling with affordability. They're struggling with the bills going up. But at the same time, you know, $62 is a modest amount for every household to pay. And again, if you're not on public water and sewer, if you're on private septic, you're not paying into that. If you're not on public water and you're on your own well, you're not paying into that. So 30% of Franklin will not be paying that $90 or so towards the water and sewer fund. So that's an important factoid that I think may help some people realize that their bills may not be going up as much as some other folks in town. So I think that's generally the overview. Again, all the materials are online, and we're here today to answer everybody's questions. And I will now yield the floor, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Lucas.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lucas Jaguar, Superintendent, Franklin Public Schools. So just wanted to share a little bit to give some context, but recognizing that we have some new folks in the room and some folks that have been tuning in. So the school department for Franklin Public Schools, we have requested and had the school committee approve a budget that came in at the 3.78% increase over last year. That's 3.1% in operational costs, and 0.68% of that is in the health insurance increases, totaling that number. We've worked really hard in collaboration with the town administrator, our school committee, our school community, to try to arrive at this table when I think a year ago where we were, to try to come and we've made some significant decisions that have created some change within our community. And some of them have led to us being able to come to the table today that have led to, I think, having this number that we're looking at for a structural deficit be less than it would have been if we made no decisions and no changes. So we've highlighted this and outlined this in some of our documents. Just as a point of orientation, if you go to our school website, we have very similar to what Jamie had just talked about on the website. There's a budget button, one click, get into the main site, and it's right there, and it can show you the historical information. But we've also highlighted and tried to put forth like what's relevant today. So I would just point out a few things on there. There's a line-by-line analysis. I think it's a great idea to put the YouTube videos to the clips. I think we can we will look to put those up as well, just to talk through so people can find what they want and make it even easier. We have the slide decks that, you know, we did a 38-page presentation on. It's riveting. And we did a 38 presentation on just our budget and whatnot. But ultimately, one of the major things I wanted to say, you know, we've talked a little bit about the redistricting and the reorganization. We basically are moving from 3 middle schools to unifying into 1 middle school. With that comes reallocation of staff, and it has created some opportunities to optimize who we have, and it has resulted in, between that and the 5 elementary schools unifying into 4, we're able to reduce some of our staffing. So about 20 FTE moving into this budget as, you know, part of our request. We were able to reduce 20 positions just based on the unification. And we did that ahead of, that was part of the budget request as just part of our process that we went through. I appreciated your comments, Chairman Mercer, around us moving it forward. We saw it as an advantageous thing for us. It just was a heavy lift to do in a year where you're reorging, because you're kind of handling multiple projects at once. It's not like a rinse and repeat situation. And we've talked a lot about apples to oranges, and we're doing it. We're finding a way to convert. And I just want to thank the folks that I work with, our community, for their patience and flexibility and understanding, our school committee for their support, and all of our educators and staff for their work. You know, we have done this. I wanted to give a shout out. I know that Jamie has referenced this before, but I know that our police chief, our fire chief, and many of our other departments have thought creatively over the years to reorganize in a way to do their own example of resetting. And I feel like this is our example as a school department to reset our foundation and ultimately try to set ourselves up for success and create as much solvency as possible as we move forward. So I wanted to say that. This budget represents an investment in preserving our class sizes. We know we experienced some cuts last year. Jamie has illustrated some information on that. We have that in our documents as well. Through this budget, the reinvestment, it does restore 8 positions if this were to pass and be approved. We were able, with the money from the summer, to restore additional 13 positions. So you take the 13 and 8, you get the 21 in the document. We are able to also look at reducing some of our fees. I know I watched the town council meeting. I heard there was a question. I was on my TV. I live locally, so I was watching and I was talking to the TV, but I figured I didn't realize I wasn't on Zoom. But ultimately, so if people are interested to get more detail, we're going to have a fee discussion on Tuesday night where we'll talk in more detail. And I'm going to use your analogy, Jamie, the tax analogy, where if I throw out a fee number and you don't deliver on that fee number, I have enough email, and hey, I don't need another email. But we will talk in more depth, and our goal is to share that information so that people have a full concept of what we're talking about. And that was a commitment that we made in this budget, was to reduce the fees related to transportation and athletics particularly. The last thing I wanted to just mention was, through this process, there are a lot of things that if we weren't able to provide level service, every department has talked about this. I've been given much more airtime than some of my colleagues. Appreciate that, but ultimately it would lead to the things that we've discussed in the past. It would impact our ability to have class sizes within the recommended ranges. It would hit a loss of those restored positions. It would keep our fees. It would most likely keep our fees right where they are, and it would create additional issues that I think all of our departments would feel through this. So this is our approach. I appreciate the unity that I've experienced and felt this year with this process, and I think that we all benefit from this. And also a taxpayer and someone who's raising children in this, sending my kids to the schools that we have, and utilizing some of the other resources our town has. I certainly am in full support of this effort on behalf of us all, because if we like what we have today, and if this is what it takes to solve that and keep the things that we have, I'm certainly in support, not only as the chief advocate for schools, but just as someone who's also a resident and paying taxes and understands the impact and pays fees as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Okay, and again, just to reiterate, what we're looking at is a $3.862 million shortfall to provide the current level of services that you're getting from police, from fire, from DPW, from the library, from the senior center, from the schools, the current level of services. And this is not just a school problem, not just a town problem or a municipal problem. It is a town-wide structural deficit. And that's what you've been hearing from us since back in September, and as the numbers have continued to come forward. Town-wide, as you heard, if we are not able to find that $3.862 million, there will be cuts across the entire town. Police, fire, DPW, all of the town part of the government, as well as the schools. So this is why we're here. We're here to listen to you, listen to your questions, answer your questions as best we can, and not just questions. If you have concerns or you just want to make a statement, that is fine as well. That's why we call this our listening tour. It's been a long one. But it's all good, and it's been certainly well worth it, and I think I speak for everyone sitting here. It has certainly been worth it to do the budget the way we've done it this year, start to finish. And again, I know I said it earlier, but I say it again, I just can't thank the school committee and the school administration enough for backing their budget process up to match with ours, so we're able to do this and provide this information to the community. George.
Just a quick question, Jamie. The $312 you mentioned on the tax bill, That's yearly, correct?
That's annual and in perpetuity.
Right,
Yep.
because I think the perception is that the quarterly bill will go up $312. And it's really $75. Go to Dunkin' instead of Starbucks and you got it.
Right. Honeydew.
Oh, honeydew. Equal opportunity.
Let's talk honeydew.
Because I've had that question. $312 is $1,200. No, it's not. It's $75 a quarter, less than $1 a day.
Yes, I appreciate that clarifying statement. I think it's in the memo as annually, but I'm sure on social media, there's all sorts of rumors.
Nope,
But
nobody
it
reads.
is annually, and that is based off the FY25 tax rate. And I think just for the record, you know, whatever the tax rate is that's certified by the council, as proposed by the Board of Assessors, that number could obviously shift. I mean, but that's just to give people an idea of what the range would be within reason.
Thank you, George. Okay, this is a listening session for us. We need to listen to you. And I know it's very difficult to be the first one, but thank you very much. Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Forbes Minnekelle. I live at 31 Longfellow Drive. And two things. I saw on Facebook that if the override does not pass, that the schools will have an additional $2 million cut. Is that true?
Yeah, that's what the model would be. So, as I just walked through a moment ago, if you look at the in the memo, there's a list, and I itemize out. Right now, account 300, just the Franklin Public School account 300, is 54% of the entire town budget. So what I did was I modeled out apples to apples out of the structural deficit or shortfall. 54% of that shortfall will be 2.085 million.
For the schools, in addition?
For account 300, correct.
Okay. My second question is, I turn 65 next month, and I'm retiring at the end of this month from the library. I'm a library employee in Natick. And I'm going to be using the senior center a lot more coming up, and I'm excited about that. But I want to know what cuts, if the override does not pass, what cuts are going to be happening to the senior center?
So in the itemized level, or in the itemized chart, I put at the bottom a line item that says various town staff personnel expenses, reduced town staff, $250,000. We've not identified that yet. It certainly could be any one of the municipal building or any other non-union staff members. It could be the senior center. It could be anywhere. We have not identified that yet, because again, this is preliminary right here. I just want to note though that the senior center budget impact is $600,000. That's a drop in the bucket of the entire budget. The second piece I want to mention is 30% of the senior center budget is paid for through fees. So I know that on the school side, they have revolving accounts. If you go look at the presentation I made this past week at the council meeting, you'll notice there are a couple slides that deal with what we call local receipts. Local receipts are really important, and if you read the department head letter, I think from back in December, you'll notice cuts to the municipal departments are not just a cut in staff. It's also, in all likelihood, a revenue generation problem. For example, the police department would have more overtime. So not only are you cutting money in the future years, you're actually increasing overtime costs, and you're putting yourself into a bigger budget deficit in 27, 28, and beyond. Same thing with the senior center. Any reductions to the senior center staff would likely have an impact on revenue generation through program fees, supportive day, Common Grounds Cafe. So a third of the senior center is paid for out of those funds. So any reductions would be a reduction in service, it would be a reduction in programs, and then revenue generation would also become a problem. I've also articulated that same point in some of the slides with the fire department, and that's probably across the board for a lot of municipal departments.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you. Colby?
Yeah, I just want to make the clarification. I know we keep saying it. It's a small thing. We don't need to linger on it too much. But all of the cuts are preliminary. Final decisions on any budget things are made by the town council at the normal time in May, or sort of we'll make decisions post override. So all of these are Jamie's possible recommendations to us. None of these are like, this is what's going to happen if the override, and that's why we can't say this is what's going to happen, because those aren't things that have been voted on yet. So we're not trying to be confusing or vague about it. We literally can't commit to anything. Jamie certainly can't commit to anything, because at the end of the day, all he does is provide recommendations or options for the town council to then vote on.
And again, that's why in Jamie's report and presentation, there is more than $3 million in possible cuts, because it could be anywhere, mix and match, it could be others. And I think Lucas wants to say a similar.
I was just going to follow up on this too, is I think the one other thought I have, just thinking, just from a leadership perspective, if we get too granular and we start to name people's, like, I don't think that's the question from the crowd, but I'm just putting it out there because sometimes I get similar questions about wanting detail on what's at stake, and I think that's a fair question. The balance to that is if we get too granular on employees that could, if we're already deciding or we have an idea, I think it creates another level of instability where if those decisions aren't final, you don't want to have people in the wings thinking if they're not actually at stake. So I think we try to be as transparent as possible when we make our decisions through the process, but ultimately I just would point out that too, just as from that perspective.
I'll say cool.
Good, thank you.
Steve, name and address, please.
Yes, Steve Sherlock, 13 Magnolia, Community Information Director for Franklin Matters, Franklin Public Radio. Just more informational point, while the videos have been touted, the audio of the 4 sessions, the 5th and the 6th, will also be available, transcripts, so you can read the 4 sessions prior. The 5th and the 6th will also be available. So in regards to however you want to get the information, watch, listen, or read, it's available, Franklin Matters, franklin.news. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you again for all you do. Please, name and address.
My name is Colleen Ted Carter, and I live at 72 Cross Street. This is just a little statement, but after watching the last meeting, and I've really, my main concern has been schools, because my kids are in schools, but I think something that really hit home to me, and as a social worker, we think a lot in like ecosystems models, but how contingent each of these systems are upon each other and how well our town does for everybody. So, funding the senior center, it helps the programs at the senior center can provide opportunities for high school kids or some, after school, or, we can be the safest town because, we have a well-funded police department, and so our kids can be safe. But if we don't fund the police department or don't fund the schools, then, we'd have to we have more, I'm just going to speak frankly, we'd have more like juvenile delinquents, like my kids, and out on the streets. I'm scaring you.
I hope you're not watching.
I'm sorry. I'm let out of captivity right now. They're terrifying. So that would be important, but they need to have stuff to do after school. So all of these things, just how important they are, how necessary they are for the town. And I encourage people, and I love it when I see people looking at this as all of our issue. One more little plug. I've been thinking a lot about how people in the community can utilize skills that they have to think creatively, I'll say this later, but think creatively to offer maybe not low cost or no cost solutions to what to what some of the things that we are going to be losing or don't have on the budget. So I could say that more eloquently, but I have stage fright.
Thank you. Please. Felicia. Name and address, please, for those who don't know who you are.
Felicia Odi, 118 Main Street. I just wanted to make a statement. I had promised that as these sessions went forward, I was going to speak more to the library. I don't want to belabor the budget. Everybody knows the library budget for years have been under 1% of the town budget. And that in 2008, this is the budget this budget we have now, 2025, is exactly or close to what the library's budget was in 2008. And since then, between 2009 and the present, the library is laid off. Well, I don't want to say laid off. We have the staff size that we were, 13 people short from where we were in 2008. In the past 3 years, for example, 2023, the library's budget was 0.82% of the municipal budget. In 24, it was 0.81%, and in 25, it dropped even further, 0.78. But I don't want people to be lost in all of these figures, because behind the numbers, the statistics, and the foot traffic is the story of the library's impact on health, individual well-being, and collective flourishing. We saw this when the COVID-19 pandemic struck. The library pivoted quickly to providing services virtually and curbside. We put out 13 weekly programs in a week, virtually, and also story times, arts and crafts, and also we purchase high-demand e-books. And through social media, and Steve Sherlock here, we made the community aware of the services and also of the online tutorial videos that we have to help them, to navigate our digital resources. The community's response was so overwhelming that in a 7-week period, 13,900 people had already participated in all of the programs that we put out. We saw record-breaking numbers in circulation. Circulation of digital collections went up 400%. We responded to 300 e-queries, reference queries. But the reason I bring this up is to say when you need resilience, the library wasn't alone in this. You want to live in a community that can respond to a pandemic or to a challenge that quickly and that well. I'm talking about it today because we know that COVID-19 still left the loneliness we feel, the isolation people experience, and the anxiety in its wake. Those things still persist. And as a community, we need to keep thinking of people who are struggling among us. The library still puts out a lot of programming to address that. I know the schools have services that are enriching and also that address, the professional services and enriching services, the schools, the police. Is a community effort. So I wanted to appeal to the community to think of us as a whole, to think of the least among us, and to think beyond the numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. Very well said. Jamie?
Very, very well said. As always, Felicia does a tremendous job. Her staff are absolutely incredible, and everything she said is true. And just as context, I left in my memo, just to know and contextually what Felicia and the staff there do, I put in here because she gave us this factoid earlier. The town of Natick, which seems to be a theme here or there, has 39 folks in their library department. We have 12.
About to be
We have
38.
38. But if the override passes in Natick, or if it doesn't pass, they won't replace that vacancy, I'm sure. But that gives you an idea, though, of really, when we look at other towns, sometimes it seems like it's apples and oranges, but it's not. That's almost triple the amount of people in Natick as here. And by the way, the population in Natick and Franklin are almost exactly the same. Unbeknownst, yeah, they're right around 34,000, 30,000, right? And as a sidebar, the town manager in Natick is named Jamie as well. But he's a very good friend of mine. He's a very good guy. But
We won't hold it
the
against you.
population in Natick is about the same as Franklin. But the tax base in Natick is far higher. I've said this many times. It's almost 20% higher. And also their mitigation payments they get from the malls in Natick are millions upon millions of dollars for police and fire. I think TJ and Jim, the fire chief and police chief, have said the same thing. I think in Natick they have almost 80 or 90 police and fire officers in each department. We barely have 60. So it just gives you the context of what we're working within. And I just wanted to add that on because it was in the memo here. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jamie. Please. Name and address, and we won't tell anybody that George is your neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Thank you, subcommittee members. Bruce Baltz is my name, and my address is 11 Sherman Avenue, which is, I might add, right off Lincoln Street. Speaking of fire and police, my goodness, I hear a lot of sirens all the time on that street. I'm a newly minted Franklin school bus driver. And that is an eye-opening experience. If you ever really want to understand elementary school kids, just become a school bus driver.
Thank you for your service, sir.
It's been a heck of a week, I'll tell you. I had the president, or the principal of Parmenter on my bus this past week, but nonetheless. You know, I've been in this town about 27 years. Recently made an attempt at a franchise venture in Franklin. But I picked this town 27 years ago because I picked towns. And Franklin, without question, I always present the town as such. Franklin, without question, is a crown jewel of this area. I'm extremely proud to be a citizen of Franklin. It's just an exceptional town. But this is my first meeting, budgetary meeting, but I've been in business a long time. How unfortunate it is to hear such an intense position of defensiveness and reactionary behaviors that we're all forced to. We are facing a financial assault, and it doesn't seem to be getting better. It's such an unfortunate situation. The one thing I've heard this morning, which is very striking, is that it's just that. It's mostly reactionary and defensiveness. You know, I liken it to the SS Franklin, where we've got roughly lifeboat capacity for 35,000 people, and we have 36 and change. So as we're filling the lifeboats, we're pushing people off the back of the ship just to stay afloat. One thing I would like to hear more of is in business, you can't cut your way to a profit. And that's an adage that I've often found to be true. I've heard nothing about looking forward, growth opportunities. You know, what is it? When I talk to fellow citizens, when I talk to other business owners, the business climate in Franklin is tepid, you know, and it's very frustrating to see that. We've seen incredible businesses go out of business in this town. Melanie Hamlin is a good example of that. It was a wonderful business. But what are we doing as a town, really looking at the more positive side of it, what are we doing for growth? Hear very little about growing. You know, business community is tepid, but what are we doing? Rather than sitting back saying, wow, striking fear and you know, second guessing of expenses and what have you, but what are we doing to grow and fortify the town, to reduce meetings of this nature? You know, wouldn't it be nice to actually be entertaining the concept of a budget surplus sometime?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I go to you, Jamie, I'm going to let Kobe speak just from the master plan standpoint for somebody that may not be aware of it. Go ahead, Cole.
Yeah, so in January, for those who don't know, in January, we approved unanimously by the planning board and the town council approved master plan update. Master plan is something that we do roughly every 10 years. The last time we had done it was 2013, and this sets a roughly 10-year vision for the future of Franklin and future growth opportunities in Franklin. And I think what you'll see in that document, highly encourage everyone to go in and especially look at the final goals and recommendations, is a vision that says, here's the type of town that we enjoy. You know, we heard from a lot of residents, you know, the type of feel that we like in Franklin, and where can we develop in a way that doesn't detract from that feel, that doesn't overly cut away our environmental resources, that doesn't radically change any neighborhood expectations, but incrementally builds upon what we have so that we have a larger tax base. You know, we talk a lot about opportunities for growth and increasing revenue. You know, fees is one of them. Grants from state and federal is one of them, and I wouldn't expect too much there these days. Overrides is one of them, and the last one is growth. So the way that we grow is really important to how we have a sustainable budget, and we want to make sure that we're growing in a way that doesn't change the way the expectations of Franklin, but builds upon its strengths and doesn't further add to its expenses. I think you'll find a lot of good stuff in the master plan, and always happy to chat with people about that.
Thank you, Kobe. Jamie?
Yeah, through Mr. Chairman, Bruce asked a great question. In fact, I think if you watched also this past week's meeting, some factoids, I'll repeat what we talked about at the council meeting. Right now, we are known as a very business-friendly community, certainly in the region. A lot of our industrial parks are thriving. I understand that there are businesses here and there that go in and out on a small level, but even if you walk uptown, out of nowhere, the Franklin Nutrition went out of business, but now there's another small business going in up there. I think overall, if you look at our restaurant licenses, for example, we have a record-breaking amount of restaurants in town right now. Number two, our hotels, our meals taxes, and our cannabis excise tax. This year, we're projecting record-breaking numbers in town history. There's a fourth hotel that went in up across the street from Spruce Pond. I say that because the Spruce Pond neighbors were very, very angry about it, very disappointed. But that fourth hotel went in, which is a huge business-friendly aspect where you're going to get 6% hotel tax off that. It's right off the highway. And oh, by the way, we're celebrating our 250th anniversary as a state, the Revolutionary War this year. Next year, the World Cup is coming. We are doing a whole series of activities through our Economic Development Committee on trying to encourage people to be in Franklin during the World Cup, which is good for our business community, for our restaurants, for jobs, and also that hotel will give us 6% while people are here for 2 months next summer. You look at the cannabis industry. This is a story that I've told many, many times, and I understand it doesn't get a lot of play, but why not do it now? We have almost $500,000 in our coffers in the operating budget from cannabis excise. We have the largest manufacturer, cannabis manufacturer on the East Coast that is headquarters is in Franklin. People may not, they can disagree or agree on the issue. But when you look at those two stores, one of which also, Boterra, was the state's first social equity applicant. Both businesses are extraordinarily thriving and doing very well, which obviously gives excise tax money into our budget. But also, just as importantly, Netta in particular has also purchased several other properties in Franklin that now houses their corporate headquarters. They have renovated those buildings. We have captured that revenue as part of our new growth. So those properties are being renovated, fixed up, and as a result, those properties are now more valuable, and that goes into the tax base times 2.5% every year. Also, a lot of those folks that work at Netta, just for example, have bought homes in Franklin, okay? Because a lot of those senior staff members live here. And so they go out and they renovate a home, and then it goes into new growth because you capture that money. So I use that example as one of the most recent ones. I also would speak to our Farmer Brewery Series, something the council was very, very supportive of. La Cantina Winery, Glen Farmer Distillery. Both of those are local businesses of local people across the street. The Shed, local family, came in, set up a restaurant across the street. Good luck getting a reservation after 5 o'clock. I try to do it after hours every once in a while, and the place is packed at 5 p.m. La Cantina is packed, right? Those are all good business opportunities where not only are those local families, we would accept it if they weren't local families, but they just happen to all be. You look at issues down here in the municipal building. We have a kiosk down in the first floor. We have a passport office. That's a lot of small amounts of revenue. I even put in a photo booth, okay? So you can do a one-stop shop. Why is that important? We were losing money opportunities down the street to Walgreens and CVS. We put it in downstairs. We also were a regional hub for that. So a lot of people come in from out of town to use our passport office, or they come in to eat out. I would also note that grants. We are widely seen as a grants machine. Congressman Auchincloss, at a meeting, I think, with the council, something we're very proud of. Out of all 30 so communities that he represents, he said that Franklin does by far the best job at matching federal, state, and local monies to getting grant opportunities. As Councilor Frangillo, I think, said, I think a lot of that may be drying up in the next few years, but nonetheless, we have been a grants machine in Franklin, and we're very, very proud of that, and we try to augment what we can afford in the operating budget through a lot of federal, state, and local partnerships with grants. And the last thing I'll mention, Mr. Chairman, I won't go into departmental reforms like the superintendent spoke to. I know those are well documented, the police and fire and stuff, but hiring Corey Shea, our arts and culture and creative economy director. She's been with us for about a year now. She's already brought in enough grant money and has done enough in the community to really, I think, more than warrant her salary. I think the more that we cement that position in the town, the more that's going to grow, especially with the 250th anniversary of the state this year, the World Cup in 2026, and our 250th anniversary as a community in 2028. Arts and culture may not be the biggest amount of money you can always make, like a big, landing a EMC or somebody up in the industrial parks, but all of that is about hotel, meals, and jobs for local businesses. And Corey is doing a fantastic job. We just had a great meeting with Michael Bobbitt, and we will be doing a lot more with the state. And as Michael Bobbitt, who's the head of the Mass Cultural Council at the state level, he clearly has been coming to Franklin every year, as you know, Mr. Chairman, at the Black Box and Kobe and Councilor Hanlon. He's coming here every year. Why is he coming here every year? Because this is the place to be. And we are really putting forth our best effort, I think, on becoming the regional hub of Southern Metro West as the arts and community epicenter. And why is that important? Because it brings people in from other towns. We haven't looked outside. I don't know if the traffic is really bad. Usually on Saturdays out on East Central Street. Nope. It's very bad. It's not too bad right now? No. Usually people complain about the traffic out here. And I remind people all the time, the reason why the traffic is bad sometimes on East Central is not because of the housing. It's actually because people are coming in here from all of the area communities to go grocery shopping, go to eat out at the Shed, go to Starbucks, go to the nail salons, go to our local businesses. We are a regional economic hub. And so I think we have done quite a bit in the years. And also this is really the Tri-County School. Yes, it is a school, a vocational school for kids to get jobs and get great careers, but make no mistake, the business community will take note. There's a lot of relationships between Tegra Medical and Plansy and our industrial parks, Thermo Fisher. They all have relationships with Tri-County. When that new school is built in the next few years, in my view, a lot of large businesses, particularly manufacturing, high-end manufacturing, are going to take note of that because it's a state-of-the-art facility, and a half a mile to a mile down the street, you've got this extraordinary state-of-the-art facility, and you've got one of the most filled-up industrial parks in the area. So That's like my 5-minute, hurdle. You can, I can
6.
talk to Bruce 6, 10 maybe. But there's a lot of good stuff happening. I hope people come away with that.
Lucas,
I won't
yeah,
take-
I know.
I don't need 6, but I'll take 1 minute.
You can take 3.
One thing we have been working, I've talked a lot about pre-K through 8. I haven't even really discussed publicly the work that we're doing at the high school, and I think it's important. We received an innovative pathway grant through the state that really looks at your high school programming and how do you align it to try to lead towards either career readiness or college readiness in a specific career area. We know with the landscape of colleges, the more you align your interests to your coursework, to the work you do outside of school, puts you in the best position to be a candidate for a particular school that you're applying, for example. I don't want to get ahead, I think Dr. Rogers is probably behind me going, don't over. But ultimately, there's a second year of that grant, which includes more funding. And we have applied, and I think we're going to have some updates on that coming up in the future, so I will be sharing that. But these are some of the things I haven't talked too much about, but at the high school, and I want to say this in the context of also, we often hear about what we've lost over 20 years, and I think if I could shift the paradigm to say, I don't think that I've been put in a position to just try to restore things that have been cut over time. I think the idea is, what are we doing today to support the students we have today, to have them graduate, and what's the need today? And it might be different than something that existed 20 years ago when I was here teaching. So what I would say to you is, I think these are some of the things. An innovative pathway is one area in the grant area. The other piece, I know Chairman Callahan spoke at the town council, gave just a sliver of an update that, like many communities, I want to say Natick might do this, around offering staff daycare opportunities that generates revenue within the school system in an effort to try to use it as a recruitment retention tool. I know Medway does that. There's a few other communities that we've been in touch with to try to look at their model. And ultimately, these are some of the ways that we're looking to try to move into the next phase, as we also do all the other work to try to reorganize schools and get everybody under the right roof for next year to start. So that was it. And then I see Colleen up. I was going to say, I appreciated your comments because this is someone, I know you mentioned you were nervous to publicly speak. We've met twice, and she is acting and living as she's speaking about what can you do to help your community. She has contacted Dean College to look at opportunities to connect the college kids and the Dean resources with high school, and she's kind of served as a conduit in the counseling realm, because that's her background and whatnot. So I just wanted to point out, when she says to the community, she's actually doing that behind the scenes, and she didn't give herself any credit for that. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm clearly one of the people that crowds up Lucas's mailbox also. I'm like, I have a new idea. I wanted to start by saying, I hope we get more hotels here, because I think we should rival Milford as being the resort capital of Massachusetts. It's amazing. Okay. But I'm not going to get off track.
No,
Schools, or the town. What I wanted to say is, my family moved here in 2016 from Hingham, which was the town I grew up in, and a town that we could not afford. And Hingham is known for having a good school system, but we moved here. We put a lot of thought into it, and a friend of mine who worked in special ed in Brockton at the time, we knew our kids were going to need some services, recommended Franklin, and it has surpassed what we expected. I gotta say, Hingham, comparing, like I have family, friends that live in Hingham, and their property taxes are like maybe 2 times, 3 times what they are here. And their services, I'll just speak for special ed, they get nothing. And they send their kids to private school because they don't have these innovative programs like the Goals program. I mean, like, if you have kids with special needs in Franklin, we have a budget deficit, but there's a menu of services and programs to meet different needs. Okay. But
no, you're good.
yeah, no, so I just wanted to, people are afraid of change. People don't want to pay more, but really, these people have done so much with so little, and it would be a really smart investment in the town. But I think the town, it'll be amazing to see what the town can do with enough funding. So.
Thank you, Colleen. 1 second, Sharon. Did you have something now? Councilor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Colleen. I'm going to go back a step, though, because I just need to add a little bit to the new growth picture for people. One of the things about arts and culture, for every dollar you spend, you bring $7 back into the community. I think anything that Corey Shea can do is, in any kind of growth revenue driver, is really important. One of the things that we've done for downtown, the businesses downtown, is we've opened up those parking lots, but we had to go through a lot of bylaw changes to do that, but we've opened those up so they're first come, first serve, right, all around that area. You know, before the master plan committee, we had a Franklin for All project, and we changed multiple bylaws, zoning bylaws, to make new growth easier and to actually have the new growth, have the town grow in a way that people want to see. These things take years for us to notice them, but there are multiple bylaw changes where we think about new growth that doesn't add to our infrastructure costs. Like, where do we put that? As we save open space, we need to allow for new growth, but we don't want to add cost to the community, right? So that's what these bylaws have done. I mean, we don't see them yet because they're brand new, but that's there. And that's one of the tools in our toolbox that we can do for the community, for the new growth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mel. Shannon, name and address, please.
Shannon Reeve, 85 Hillside Road. I have lived in Franklin since 1965, my whole life. And I went through every school, and I am the last first grade classroom at the brick school. Very proud of that with Mrs. Perrin. And my children have gone through the Franklin School program. And I'm going to piggyback on the special needs program because my oldest child is severely disabled. So I'm going to touch on the fact that, first, both of my children are out of school right now, and I support the override because I was fortunate to grow up in this town and go through amazing schools and amazing teachers and live in this town. And then I had a disabled child. And the special ed program is surpassed. I kind of like to think I broke them in a little bit. Poor Mrs. Sabolinsky. And paved the road a little bit. And they're very, very open, and they're amazing. And the van drivers, and the monitors. And you don't want to lose that. And then I go back to police and fire, because she was disabled and had a lot of behavioral and mental health issues. And police and fire were amazing. And my brother is a retired firefighter in Franklin. And if I didn't have those resources, I don't know where I would have been as a parent, as a survivor of raising a child with a severe disability. She was able to stay in the Franklin program for a very long time, but then she did have to go out of district. And we have those services. If your child needs to go out of district, Franklin provides that and the busing. And if we lose that, that's very, very sad. It's sad for our community and everything that this town has built for the reputation of that school program. I don't have children in school anymore, and I'm going to support it. And I think people that have had their children go through our school program, the library, her speech was beautiful. I remember when the glass floor was there. That says a lot. And we just have a beautiful town. And whether or not you have kids here anymore, you should support this override, because this is our town. And to keep it going the way it is, and to keep our police and fire and the safety. When my parents were elderly, I needed to call on them. It was a lot. And they are there to support us. They get the training now to support the families with the disabled. Again, I like to think Abby broke them in, but I'm just saying. You know, and I'm grateful and I'm grateful, and I think everyone should support the override.
Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Abby had something to do with it. Please. Name and address, please.
Ann Valuzzi, 2 Elm Street. I have to use my notes because otherwise I go on tangents.
That's
so.
fine. We all do.
The potential override numbers that have been shared seem to be what the current deficit is, which would be provide level service funding. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So, based on the last few years, like the schools have had to lose so much. The library has had to lose so much. I see the fire department posting about the number of full recalls and mutual aid, which, if we use mutual aid, then the funds go to those towns instead of Franklin. It seems like there's so much need across the town. Has there been any discussion about possibly asking for more than the current deficit in order to help with restoring stability, providing needs? The departments aren't asking for them because they know they can't get them. But should our fire department have more people? Yes. Should our library have more people? Yes. Can we address that?
Certainly, and just before I give it to Jamie, the other piece that this committee, as well as the council, has to look at is the affordability of all of these adjustments. Not just that crystal ball as to what's next year gonna be. I think we all know nobody has that crystal ball to know what it's going to be. But Jamie, I know you.
Well, I mean, I think, ultimately that's the decision of the Joint Budget Subcommittee next week. To Ann's question, I mean, I don't know how to really answer that. I mean, I think, if you just contextually ballparks, if you add in another shift of firefighters and police officers, you're looking at another $600,000 or $700,000 increase. If people want more road work, you'd be adding another few $100,000, $500,000, but that's not gonna really show up. I don't think people are gonna feel like $500,000 in additional road work is gonna make a substantial difference. Just because of the nature of where we live, by the way. That's not because Massachusetts or the DPW does a bad job, it's just snowy and cold. I think to your point, Ann, about other cuts, I put out the memo, if we were to fix this shortfall, 21 of the 37 positions that were spoken of a year ago would be restored. That's not everything, but that's pretty good, and I think the superintendent has spoken just a little while ago. I respect the fact that for many that have been in the district for 20 years, they feel like foreign language and some other services have been let go. But also education, public education has changed and evolved. I don't know if we can get all of that back. When you start adding it up, now you're into the $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 million override number. And I think that those conversations we've not heard that very often in a lot of these listening sessions. So happy to provide the committee with some numbers if they want. I just gave you some ballpark ideas, but it depends on what those priorities would be in. And I think the school committee, in particular, if it's school services, the school committee would have to vote or decide what are you restoring, how much is that going to cost, and then adding that to the table, and then we'd have to have a discussion, I think, within the next week or two of exactly what that metric would be.
Yeah, and I think, I'll go to you in a second, Lucas, and I think part of those discussions, and you've heard them speak about restoring 21 positions, but they're able to do that because of the unbelievable job that the school administration and the school committee did in redistricting, because there is nothing in this world worse than redistricting. Having been the chairman of the school committee in the 90s, the last time we did it, I can tell you, it's not fun. Lucas, anything?
Just, I think, we all can agree. I think there's a shared interest in two things. We need a win in this town. We need something, I don't want to go through another year of reductions and cuts. I think that's obviously well known. I also know that there are, and from my perspective, chief kind of educational leader, there are things that I would love to build out and include. And I know that every department would have their own menu and list, and I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
I think the balance is, having sat through, multiple sessions, there's clearly, and we saw that last year with the override vote, there's multiple perspectives on this, on what's the number that is suitable for the majority of people to approve, kind of the process. So I think we're in a situation where what we've put forth today, the recommendation that the school committee approved and went through, was really trying to look at how do we kind of stabilize the ship and start to look at creating some solvency as we move forward and build our budget. And it's not to say that we wouldn't want to add more and more, and there are things that have been, we baked in the 8 restorations from things that were cut more recently. It's not to say we wouldn't look programmatically, but I think that's the visioning piece that I want to get into. But I'll tell you, I spent the summer trying to rehire, cut, reduce, build programs that don't exist. Like, for example, the orchestra and the robotics club, we had to build as after-school programs. So it's hard to be in the kind of the ship steering when you're in the basement, like shoveling the coal to power the engine. So I think like the idea of trying to get stable allows us to do visioning. I gave a little glimpse into some of the work at the high school. I think as we live and realize 25, 26, with new people learning, a lot of my attention and my staff and the teachers and everything is going to be about trying to live in our new reality under the roofs that we're in. At the same time, looking at what's working, what's not, and then we want to be able to provide and share with the community their investment in a high-quality education and what that will look like. So I think my answer to that is I think the number could always be bigger across the board. I certainly feel that way, but I do think that whatever the number is decided from the joint budget, with approval, hopefully from the school committee to come through and then to the town council, I hope it's a number that's as large as it can be that can pass. And I think Tom's quote was that a while ago.
I agree with that too.
And I appreciate your advocacy, because I think we get the question too, where you're coming from.
And then my next part is,
Actually, before you
go
start
ahead.
that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Councilor Chandler.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. And just give me 1 second. I have to say, Shannon, you're a great mother. You really are. You did a great job with Abby, and I've been lucky enough to know your family for the last almost 30 years. So thank you very much for everything you've done. And thank you for your support for the schools.
Yep, thank you.
Hi, Ann.
Hi.
Sorry to do that.
No, please, she deserves
You've
that.
been waiting. Okay, after the last council meeting, I got actually a lot of feedback because I was very adamant about the 3.8. So, and people have given me some good thoughts on everything, but with that 3.8, we're gonna keep the 3rd ambulance. We're gonna keep the police whole, the fire department whole. There'll be no layoffs, okay? And to the school point, what do I hear the most about? Art, music, even language now, correct?
Yep.
That's all staying. There will not be one of those teachers laid off. Okay, so that's so important, just to stay whole, and that's how I look at that. And, I'm sorry, Lucas, but I hope if this override passes that the bus and sports fees will be lowered. But that's gonna be this.
I'll just publicly say, that's baked in, and we're gonna give a more definitive, clear number on that, but I want it known that that was part of the plan, and that's what we're working to make the adjustments.
And we'll all be watching that meeting on Tuesday.
It's considerations on Tuesday to get a public discussion for transparency, but I think the decisions will have to flow like they normally do for fees. It goes through subcommittee and then school committee, just to be clear, but I just want to talk out loud so that people can see.
And they reiterated this great, but since I'm gonna be one of the people that vote on this number, I believe that is the number that we can finally pass, okay, that 3.8. That's how I feel. That, again, the great word, win. Do you want to win? Or am I going to come back in May with Councilor Frangillo and there will be no one Franklin in May? We'll be fighting, it'll be terrible. Because everybody's going to want their piece.
Right.
So please, when you talk to your friends, please think of that, you know what? I don't want any layoffs. I want the ambulance coming. I want my kids to have music and everything. So that's where I'm coming from. So
That
thank
makes
you,
sense. And I
ahead.
mostly asked because I wanted that answer out
You-
there.
Understood.
Good.
And then, I guess the other piece of my question, which goes a little bit with all the emails that you all get and, you know, the presence on social media that we're all seeing, I hugely appreciate everything that's happened over the last year. I mean, I was a yes vote for the override last year, but the amount of information that's been shared and the transparency that has happened, and, you know, I have kids in school, but I wasn't as involved as I could have been. And this past year has helped me get there, which I'm glad for me. But there still seems to be a lot of distrust out there. And these info sessions, when people listen, I think that they hear a lot of information, and it's been fantastic. Other than this, I guess, you know, I know there's some people you can't change, and and that is what it is. But is there, I guess, what else is being done to dispel some of that distrust? And is there an effective way to get the message to people who believe that the override isn't going to go what it needs to go to? Or, you know what I mean? Like, all the things that are being spouted out, but like, how can we remedy that?
And I'll tell you the best way, you. And every single person in this room, and every single person that's listening, it's up to you to tell the people, your friends, your neighbors, what is reality and what is not. And we can't do it. 9 members of the town council, 7 members of the school committee, we don't have that reach. We need the residents. And that was the reason, one of the big reasons, why we did these listening sessions in different parts of the community. So we could get the message to as many people as we possibly can. Now it's up to you. You have to go out and sell this. Sorry, that's.
It's okay. Thank you all very much. Your work is
Are you
appreciated.
telling her
Thank
to
you.
be the change?
Yeah, there you go. Jamie.
Councilor Mercer couldn't have said it better, and, you know, he really couldn't have. You know, I know in the terms of trust, I know the full council has the complete trust of me and the department heads and Lucas, and I know the school committee has the same trust of the superintendent and the staff. I think where the gaps end up being is that coalition has to be broadened, and there's no substitute for in-person connection. Coffees, we all in this community have exponentially more in common than we don't. And I think that the comments today and at these listening sessions show that. And ultimately, over the next 60, 90 days, the residents of this community have to get together and talk to one another about that issue that Ann brought up, about trust. That the budget documents are here, everything's online, it's been transparent, the schools in town both have everything out there, whatever those issues of trust are. You know, and I would cite really quickly, just to close out, the last couple of days, someone came to me about, you know, social media fight. And those individuals actually met in person. And they came together and told me that they actually may have, you know, disagreed on one issue, but they all had way more in common once they got together and had a cup of coffee. And unfortunately, a lot of that is very stressful and time consuming, but that's how you win.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Jamie. Please. Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Goddard. I live at 724 Lincoln. That smart woman is sitting right there who started that Facebook group with someone that they disagreed with. And I apologize, my friend Anna was much more organized taking notes before she stood up here. I only moved to town in 2021. We moved from Framingham, which is a town city with its own set of issues around budgets and schools and town structure and all of those things. So we moved to Franklin for the schools, I will say. We did not know the budget situation when we moved. So I also have educated myself in a very short period of time, often with Ann's help. But I just wanted to say this. I've been an elementary educator for 20 years, not in town. And I recently had this kind of magical experience of teaching a new civics unit to my third graders about civic responsibility and how private and public services work and how taxes work. And hearing 8- and 9-year-olds understand on a fundamental basis how, even if my interest is the schools or your interest is fire or your interest is police, that those things don't live in a vacuum and that we all have a responsibility to provide those things for each other, even if you don't need them in the moment. These are independent school kids, understanding like the purpose of public school and all of that, which was really interesting. One of my children is at Sullivan right now, so I was able to kind of give some personal anecdotes. But I guess I just wanted to say, where we were last year with this, with people feeling like if you were for the override, you only cared about the schools, and where we are now, I think, is very different. Getting there, understanding that we're all going to have a price to pay if this override doesn't pass. So I guess I just wanted to say thank you for holding the sessions. I do think it has made a steady, slow improvement on people understanding that it's not just the schools that are at risk, although I do feel like it's a little bit of a disproportionate risk there. But I'm really hoping that just what you said, we as the people in this town can continue to explain to each other that there is no magic amount of money that's hidden anywhere, and that it is all our responsibility to pass this override and pay a little bit more per household, even though we're all struggling. Because sending those delinquents, I have one too, might be out into, I mean, when you send those kids out into the world who haven't had the things at school that make school enjoyable and bring mental health stability to these kids, like the arts and sports and all of the things that really bring them community and comfort in schools, when you don't provide those things or you have to cut those things. I know we still do have some language in music. It is not what it used to be. We have a responsibility to all of us to do that. So here's hoping.
Thank you. Thank you. Lucas?
That sounds like an unbelievable lesson, by the way,
Yeah.
for third grade. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to hear that discussion with the kids. That's remarkable. I'm thinking of I think it's Frederick Douglass' quote that was about, it's easier to shape young people than to correct adults. Like, you know what I mean? I think,
Right.
I don't know if he used, I don't remember the exact quote, but I remember like the idea of the investment in young people, that as they enter adulthood, if they have a foundation, they have the right skills, not just academically, but emotionally and whatnot, they enter the world of adulthood better, and I think that benefits us all as a community, so.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lucas. I think we have a hand up on Zoom. Robert Brown.
Just give me 1 second
Oh,
here.
sorry.
Let's see if I can see that.
The next button is,
There he is. It just takes a second, I think, to load. I think, Robert, if you take yourself off mute, you should be all good. He's got to unmute.
Oh, hello?
Now we got your, we have you now,
Okay.
Robert.
All right, thank you, guys. I
Just
wanna-
name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Robert Brown, and my address is Balsam Breeze Lane, and I'm actually in Pearland, Texas.
Franklin.
I've lived in Franklin for close to 50 years, and actually grew up down the Country View area, which is down by Gorelick Farms and Forge Park. And I just wanted to, I've been crunching some numbers, and I've sent a informational thing to Mr. Helen to kind of give him my background and something I'm looking for. So the numbers I'm crunching I can't say they're genuine. I've been using what's on the website, but what I'm looking for is the itemization by department for their budgets. I'm doing this all on my own. I'm, just trying to help the town, because Franklin's always going to be in my heart. And I, in no way, am dissing on anybody on the town council, the FinCom, or even Mr. Helen, you guys are all doing an awesome job, and I know your duties are quite stressing sometimes. But overlooking I'm not gonna throw a bunch of numbers out there and baffle anybody, but the projected 2026 budget is $168 million. The 2025 budget was $159 million. The increase is at roughly 5.5%. If I take the 2025 budget and I add a 2.5%, that gives me $3.9 million, which is a huge difference. It's roughly a savings of over $4 million if we stay within that. Now, some of the things I've been coming up with, after my results, I can keep the school, police, and fire budgets as they are. The school budget is an increase this year of 3.8%. Again, I'm not gonna get into all these numbers and start throwing numbers out there, but if we can keep the school, police, and fire budgets as is, that will maintain the current services that you have. If you make some cuts to the other departments of the 2%, you will gain $3,700,000 plus. Now, I haven't factored in any of the indirect revenue or the stabilization fund, which I'm hoping you guys call it the stabilization fund. We call it free cash, which is actually not a good title.
They're two different things, Robert.
Okay. Your stabilization fund is made from departments that go under budget, am I correct?
You are not.
No.
Okay.
It's okay, Robert. I will reply back to your email. I got it last night at 8 p.m. You're mixing a few numbers around. You know, it's okay. You and I can talk about this offline and email back and forth. A couple of points. The 168 million you're describing actually includes the enterprise funds for water, sewer, trash, and stormwater. Those are legally state-allowed funds that are off the operating budget, so it's not, apples to apples, if you will.
Right.
The actual operating budget is 150 million, and you do say that in your budget. The second point I'd make is I can't just cut 2% out of every other budget. Some of those budgets are one person. Actually, a lot of municipal departments only have 1 or 2 or 3 people in them. A lot of them are regulatory related, so I can't just reduce those. And then there's also like the municipal benefits budget. There are requirements in there in state law that we have to fund for workers' comp, unemployment, pension assessments, healthcare. So when you look at it, I unfortunately can't just across the board kind of like conceptually do a 2% cut. I do think I've walked the community, you may be just tuning in now or recently in the last couple of months, Robert, but we've walked the community through how the budget evolution is. If you go to look at the town website, I'm sure you've been there on the town budget page, you can kind of follow along all the way back to last September, even before that, where we left off over last summer's budget adjustments. Where the town council voted, 1.2 million worth of municipal cuts to transfer to the school department. And we also infused in, to your point, a little bit of stabilization money, which was one-time money. So maybe you and I can handle this offline. I just don't want to try to confuse people with numbers, and just want to make sure you and I get on the same page. I did stop working last night, Robert. You emailed me right after I shut down the computer at 7:30. I missed you by about a half hour, but I will get back to you later today.
Yeah. Jamie, I'm in, like I said, I'm in Texas, and I'm roughly an hour behind you guys.
Sure.
So that's probably why.
That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah, I would love to talk to you.
Sure.
And if you can give me some information. Again, I retired and moved here. I had some businesses in Massachusetts and in Franklin. My family and friends are still in Franklin. They also own businesses there. And it's just, I'm quite involved. Like I said, Franklin's always in my heart. If I can go over some stuff with you and you can give me some information, I'll offer my service to try to help out the town. And I am not looking at like an across-the-board cut. It's more or less, I'm gonna liken it to a fine tuning of different departments, which I know you guys do. The FinCom and the school committee and the town council, you're going with the department heads, going over their requirements. And I have to hand it to you, you're putting back 70% of the positions that were lost because of the shortage from this past year. So, I mean, that's a heck of a job alone right there. But I'm just thinking, you know, we have a lot of seniors in town, a lot of people that have lived there a long time. And I know it's a $300 increase a year on their tax, but some of them don't get that kind of increase on their fixed incomes. So I'm just trying to, you know, help out some of the older citizens and some of the people, you know, that can use it. So, and like I said, I'm not looking for anything out of this. I'm just trying to help the people of Franklin and help, you know, the town government. And there are a lot of other options that I have come up with, but I'm not gonna go into those
Robert,
now.
I'll pull you
I've gotta
offline,
finish
and
up.
I would encourage you to watch online on our budget site. We did a listening session the other day at the senior center, and I think you might be surprised at how many seniors in town and how many veterans actually stood up in support of an override. So you might want to watch that 2 or 3 hour clip.
Yeah, I have watched those.
Okay.
All right, Robert, thank you very much for your input, and thank you for continuing to care about the town of Franklin. Okay, is Mark, please, name and address.
Good morning, Mark Minichelli. I'm 31 Longfellow Drive here in Franklin. Many of you have seen me at this microphone a few times. I grew up in Franklin and moved away for career reasons for many years and came back about 8 years ago. I love this town, and I've said this before at this microphone. I always speak proudly of growing up in Franklin. I was educated here, and I think it was extremely important to help me be successful through my life. My daughter and son-in-law are raising our granddaughter here in Franklin now. I want, not just from a selfish reason of wanting her to experience something similar, but for all the kids that are here in Franklin going through the school system. I would love for them to get the same results, foundation, education that I experienced, that helped me through my life. I think they all deserve it. I think all the kids throughout the town, the state, and our country deserve a good, solid education. And beyond the education, a great experience growing up in Franklin. For those reasons, those are the reasons why I've started to become more active and come to town meetings and speak my voice. Because like the caller that we just heard from, I'm grateful for the things that the town of Franklin has done for me. And I'd like to give back. I'd like to see it continue to prosper and grow. You can't continue to grow and prosper while cutting every single year. I went over some numbers. I'm going to ramble around a little bit here, but I went over some numbers to try to, and I'm not going to share a lot of numbers, just a couple of basic ones. We tried to pass an override last year, unsuccessfully. We've cut as a result of not making it. We made cuts last year. If people feel like there's a fat on our budget or we're hiding something, it should have been obvious by what we went through last June to try to cut back in every single department to make this budget work. I don't see how we can look ourselves in the mirror and go through that process again. It just doesn't make sense to try to do that 2 years in a row, knowing we need more money than we have just to maintain where we are today. Jamie had made comments earlier about all the different area towns that are having similar issues making ends meet right now and looking at overrides. You think about that, and you think about how rarely a town like Franklin actually is being able to be successful to do an override. And you have to ask why. Why is that why is this happening? Well, I grew up in Franklin, and I know in 1980, when Massachusetts passed Proposition 2.5, people felt like Taxachusetts was where they lived, right? And people were tired of having their property taxes increase so much year over year over year. I understand why Proposition 2.5 was passed 45 years ago. And so I did some calculations this morning. I looked at the federal government Social Security website to understand what the COLA increases were over all of those years. So from 1980 until today, the federal government has given COLA increases to Social Security recipients. The COLA increases over all of those years averaged 3.3%. So if you believe the federal government's estimates for how cost of living is increasing, and if you look at what we're doing with a 2.5% property tax cap every single of those years, we're falling behind every single year. And so doesn't it make sense that once in a while you have to look at your budget, you have to look at your shortfalls and make a correction to that? 2.5% is not enough to keep up with inflation over the last 45 years. So it's time. I don't want to go into every single thought that I have, because we'd be here all day long. But I trust. I mean, if it's hard to not listen to each department head and superintendent and the administrator, and it's hard to hear what their stories are and doubt that they know what they're talking about. They certainly know what they're talking about. To take the budget and put it in the hands of the experts is what we're doing. We have great people in all of these positions. We should trust them to do the right thing. And we don't have to just trust them, because they're showing us, they're being transparent with us about what they're doing. So I haven't said it yet, but I'm totally in favor of an override.
I thought that was where you were going. I wasn't sure, but
I'm also very empathetic to people who honestly are on fixed incomes and are struggling. And I was so happy to see that the town has put together some financial relief approaches for people to consider. And if you haven't seen it yet, I know Jamie has put the links online on one of his documents. There's hard copies here in the municipal building of citizen discounts and exemptions. It's not going to solve everybody's problems, but it helps. And I think we need to be empathetic for that piece of our community. The final thing I wanted to say is escaping me at the moment. But I
besides supporting the override.
I support the override. And did I say that I support the override? Because I certainly do.
95-year-old mother support.
And that's right. And not only do we have generations below us, but my mother, who's been in town since 1940-something. My father-in-law lives in town. We're empathetic to what it is to be a senior in town and on a fixed budget. But we want to have the pride and the services and the experiences that Franklin offers us today. We have to continue to pay for it. And you get more back, I believe, you get more back than the relatively moderate amount of increase that each household is looking at. So thank you for your time. I know what it is that I forgot to say.
Okay.
I really, truly appreciate the time and effort that you've all put in. The override attempt last year was pretty solid, but what you've done this year to get an earlier start, to put in more hours, to share more information, to make more things transparent to us, to have 6 listening sessions. It's just phenomenal. Most of you are not paid. It's unbelievable to me the time you put in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, is there, please, once again, name and address.
Jennifer Forbes Minnekelle, 31 Longfellow Drive. I'm a product of Franklin as well. I've lived here since I was 2 years old, and I grew up on Partridge Street. And I went through this Franklin school system, and let me tell you, my husband and I are opposites. He was a math genius, and I was theater arts and music in high school. And I've heard that the theater arts program has been cut, and that is why I went to school. If there wasn't theater arts, Kaleidoscope, OSCE, the choir, concerts, I don't know. I don't think I would have gone to school. I didn't go to school a lot. I skipped school a lot anyway, but that kept me going to school. And to see the cuts that have happened over the years to those programs breaks my heart. And I know it breaks a lot of students who are in the Franklin school system now. And I know those programs, some of them might be restored, some of them may not be restored. But to think of school without those arts programs is super sad to me. And I've been very successful in my life, and part of it's because I've met my husband. I was 17 years old. But I know that the override is not going to fix everything, but it's a good start, and I can't see voting anything else but yes for this override. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait a minute, you know what? I'm going to give you Laura's time because she's online.
Okay. I won't take 31 Longfellow Drive, still. The last point that I wanted to make, and it was to Councilor Chandler's comments, when we were discussing, can we get a little bit more than the $3.86 million that's been identified? My thought on that is, we certainly don't want to go too far above that number. But given the record of overrides and how often a town can actually get an override passed, is this the opportunity for us to get a little bit ahead? The costs go up every year. So to think that you can get that amount in and be whole for a few years, I don't think that's a valid assumption. Costs are going to continue to increase. Medical costs, Jamie has shared with us, have gone up tremendously over the last few years. Maybe now is the time to get a little bit more than what we absolutely need so that we don't have to go through this process every single year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Again, and the only thing I'll say there, and this is just my opinion on this, is, I look at what our structural deficit is right now, and I look at the affordability for the entire community, and I know there's many people that can afford to do this, but there also are many that are on fixed incomes and cannot afford to pay one more dollar in taxes. So you have to look, we as a joint budget subcommittee and we as a council have to weigh those parameters and say, okay, what is the best number, the affordability number for our community? And I think what we've been hearing and what we've been seeing for the most part is what our structural deficit is right now. And townwide, and that's the 3.862, and a win is a win.
Yeah.
Jamie.
Through Mr. Chairman, I know Mark was with us Wednesday night till the end, and then the next morning, Councilor Frangillo and a few of us, Steve, were up early at the Downtown Partnership. At least as of 8 a.m. on Thursday, we were expecting a 20% tariff on Canada, which was going to raise energy prices on people. That has been rescinded, and in this consistently on-again, off-again tariff thing down in D.C., now there's talk about a 250% tariff on lumber. We can opine on that, whatever. But I do think seriously, I think to Mark's point, a strategy that a lot of communities employ at times, Norwood did in 2019, Acton did a couple years ago, is in regular times, to Mark's point, you would try to add a number to that as a stabilization account for future years. Acton just did that a few years ago, again, Norwood. I think the difficulty now is that every resident is seeing, including all of you, all of us, whether you have the ability to pay or you don't have the ability to pay, and you are on a fixed income, you're seeing it from every angle, right? It's not just eggs. We hear about eggs, but by the way, cheap plug, go to Market Basket, they have not increased their price of eggs. I don't know why the eggs thing is always up there, but like I still go to the Market Basket, it's the same price. Maybe it's just arty. But in all seriousness, when you see in the tariff conversation that Jeff brought up about energy prices, you know, and you're seeing the costs of everything go up, homeowners insurance, car insurance. I didn't get a ticket. I've not had an accident, but my car insurance went up. And I think people are just seeing, thanks Lucas, but I think people are, right, on the way out today.
Yeah, what did he say, yeah?
You know, but I think to balance that out, I think Mark is bringing up an idea that a lot of communities would normally talk about. It's certainly still at the discretion of the council and the Joint Budget Committee. But I think people listening at home and probably here, you know, and the affordability issue in Massachusetts in general is something that Governor Healy, Senate President Spilka, and Speaker Mariano have all spoken to in the last few weeks in this legislative session on Channel 5 interviews or in other periodicals. So I think Mark's suggestion is very worthy. I don't want to dismiss it at all. I think the challenge for this board is, you know, how do you relate those costs of this versus everything else that are impacting all of your lives, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there. This isn't the only increase people are going to see in life.
Exactly. Okay, is there anyone else in council chambers or out there on Zoom land? Yep.
It's Teacher-elect Still, 13 Magnolia Drive Still. Community Information Director. So just a couple of reflections to help others who are listening to this, potentially if not here, in the future. The listening sessions, as I understood it, was effectively to build the information, share the information, get a lot of questions and answers to enable you as a group to determine a recommendation, which the council then, as you mentioned, and clearly they're the ones who can make the final decision. What's next? The next piece, and I know a couple of our neighbors in this session and other sessions have asked, what are we going to do next? And you said, rightly so, we're going to have to become ambassadors in order to do so. We're going to have to continue to have the discussions with our neighbors, friends, non-friends, whatever. I would also propose two things. One, certainly I'm in the position with the studio in terms of sharing the information that you're creating, the facts that you're creating. I would propose that since I've already done the transcripts, and we're going to have two more, that we got a subcommittee, unofficially, it's ad hoc, not necessarily you, you're welcome, of whoever to put together the summary of the questions and answers. Because there's been multiple points of the story as you've come from September through to now. At some point in time, you're going to make a decision. I won't speculate as to what. Assuming it is a decision for a date, then we'll know what we're going to have to argue for and argue around and convince. Let's pull together this ad hoc group, however, to say these are the pros and cons, and during that discussion, then ultimately come out with this is the statement. And I respect certainly the town and the schools. You're limited in what you can say. Our citizens, it's our issue. We're going to have to come up with that. So let's try and figure that out. Proposal. As part of that, the other thing, while you've done the listening sessions, and it's been great, because you've learned, we've learned, we're also going to have some advocacy sessions. And obviously, they're going to have to be in other sites because they can't be on town property because of the requirements around that. So just an idea to start people thinking about having these other discussions going forward, whether they're 2, 3, 4, or larger, non-town, non-school facilities. Maybe as the weather gets better, we can do it on the town common. That's okay. So 2 ideas as we close. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, and absolutely, let's talk about that. I think those are both great ideas, and I know there are some people out there, and there are groups out there that are starting to put together, or starting the thought process of putting together groups of people to, whether it be coffees or luncheons or a cocktail, whatever the case may be. And I'm sure that there's many of us here sitting on the Joint Budget Subcommittee that would be happy to come to some of those. Just reach out if anybody wants to have a group of people to get together to talk about it. Reach out to me, and I'll make sure that some member of the Joint Budget Subcommittee or School Committee or Council, FinCom, somebody will come and help with those information sessions. So
I'd love to do that. If it's at anyone else's house. Social workers, what I do, I just can't get my house clean enough. I will advocate.
Thank you.
Love these ideas. I think this was a really good meeting. Positive.
Thank you. Ken?
Just one comment. I know we're wrapping up now. We've gone through 5 of these listening sessions. We have one left on Wednesday evening, which I know you're probably about to give the reminder.
That's
there.
okay.
I want to encourage, in addition to this, just making sure we continue to reach out to our friends, neighbors. I had a nemesis growing up, so nemesis as well. And invite them to the Wednesday session. I don't know if we can do. I know last year we had like electric signs or signage, just something to remind people. I think there's going to be a benefit to getting as many people to the last session as possible, so we can make sure people feel heard. Because ultimately, what the town does, I think we will strongly benefit from getting a better, larger swath of the town in terms of just having people informed about the choices we make, whether or not an override ends up being something that happens. I think it's important to get as many people, in the know about the challenges or the questions we're trying to answer as possible. So.
Thank you, Ken. I think that's a great idea. I think
we have limited, capacity on the electronic signs, but yeah, I know, I'll talk to the chiefs about it, but.
Portable sign
Right.
that we could use.
But if they're being used for a detail or a construction site or something like that,
Yeah,
I think I'll talk to the chiefs about it. I'm not dismissing the idea, it is. I think at the end of the day, to your point earlier, Councilor Mercer, and you nailed it right on the bullseye, you gotta call up your friends. You gotta call up your friends, and there's just, at some point, and I do respect the fact that a lot of people wait for the official vote or whatever. It's at the high school auditorium, just for folks to be reminded of that.
And we can get 834 people sitting in seats.
Yeah, and I'll, and so I'll talk to the chiefs about it, and, we'll certainly do the social media posts and the outreach that we've done, but, as kind of practice makes perfect, there's still no substitute for one-on-ones and talking to people and getting them out, because even after the 12th, that's what's going to be required of the community regardless.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Ken. Any other from the committee? Okay. In closing, I will say thank you, everyone, for coming this morning. Thank you for those of you listening. Thank you for those who came in on Zoom. This has been a great process and continues to be a great process. I look forward to our final listening session on Wednesday night. Just to reiterate, at the conclusion of the listening part of that meeting, the Joint Budget Subcommittee will discuss and come up with a recommendation, be it whether to put an override question on a ballot or not, and what the amount and the date to recommend to the council, who will see it on the 19th of March and that's when a ballot question will be voted yea or nay by the council. That's the process. We look forward to you continuing to be involved. If a question comes up that you haven't asked, please come to that meeting or shoot us off an email. We will get back to you and we will answer your questions. Tell your friends, please. And again, thank you to all the department heads, the school administration, the town administration, our town administrator, our superintendent of schools. Can't thank you folks enough. This has been such a team effort to get us to this point, and all the hours that you folks have put in above and beyond, we thank you for that. The entire community does. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Non-debatable. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, everybody.
Recording stopped.